as a veteran, small business owner, what can we do for you?
What we can all do for all veteran business owners is promote each other.
My main mission was to look at tools of technology to leverage small business and give them more of a competitive advantage.
My mission for Veteran Bargains is very simple: to help vets.
That story in itself, to run for Vista City Council, is a journey.
I think this is an opportunity to really collaborate with those gone before us.
It's really kind of a labor of love.
And now your host.
Welcome back to the Veterans Radio Show. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a really amazing day, and thank you so much for tuning in, especially this Friday, which is a week before Christmas. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of Christmas shopping to do last minute, but you're making time to join us. So on our Veterans Radio Show, we talk with heroes in action, making it happen for our veteran community. I am your host, Dalia Rivera, and we want to welcome you to our live Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Amazon Live, and of course, our podcast listeners. We appreciate you and your service. This is the Veterans Radio Show, and without you, we would not be able to bring this segment. So hit that subscribe button and please share this episode with another veteran, and let's hear your thoughts in the comments during the show. We love seeing your questions and comments, so don't be shy, okay? All right, so first I want to announce our sponsor for today is Michelle Black, who is she is an author, and she is a Gold Star widow. I'm sorry, get tongue tied here. She's also our guest for today, and I'm really excited to introduce her to you and to have her here to share her story. So without further ado, here's Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you very much. This is such an honor, Michelle. I know we were just talking in the background, and I have so many questions. But first, I would just want to say thank you so much for what you have done with your book, for what you share with us, and also for having the courage to do what you do. And people will get it once we start going into it. But what you did for your husband is something that I think it's not just helping your family, but it's going to help many, many other wives or spouses who lose their military members, and they're about to learn why I'm saying this. But can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do?
Thank you. Yes, I am Michelle Black. I am a Gold Star widow. My husband was killed in 2017 in the Niger ambush in Niger, Africa, in a village just outside a village called Tongo Tongo. And he was killed alongside three other men, Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, and Sergeant First Class Jeremiah Johnson. They were all part of a Green Beret team who were in country doing a by, with, and through mission, training their partner forces when they were ambushed. So as you can imagine, that was extremely difficult for us. When we heard the news, it became a huge national news story because it was the largest loss of life on the continent of Africa since the Battle of Mogadishu, which is known as Black Hawk Down. So it just became very politicized. There were media everywhere. There was a phone call between Trump and one of the widows that blew up as well. And it just seemed like the incident just kept kind of snowballed. It kept just growing. And so they started AFRICOM started an investigation straight away into the incident, and all of the families, we looked forward to learning, what happened on the ground, what happened to my husband and the other men, and why they were out there, because they were on a mission that they wouldn't normally do. The media began to say that they acted like a bunch of cowboys and had gone rogue. The issue with that was that I knew Green Berets and I knew my husband, and they don't go rogue. So that struck me as very concerning. Then about, I'd say about March of 2018, so several months after the incident, we got word that there was a head cam video on that had been stolen from the body of Jeremiah Johnson. And that was taken by CBS News, and that was released by them. And then that spread across Twitter, while Twitter, Facebook, all forms of social media. And at that time, that made it available to not just the general public, but my children and my mother-in-law, and all the other family members to see their loved ones die, which, makes me a little emotional every time I talk about that piece. So then the investigation continued, and soon in May, we were being briefed. And when I sat inside the briefing room, it began to become clear to me that the investigating officer and several in the room were not being honest with us. They were not answering my questions. They were not being very direct. They were kind of a bunch of half-truths and then a few outright lies. And I thought, well, surely they aren't going to punish the wrong people, at least. What I had hoped for was not for punishments, but rather to see that we would get the truth and that it would prevent further incidents from happening. Because at that point, nothing was going to bring Bryan back. But I hoped at the very least we could prevent future incidents from happening. And then the next week, after our family briefs were all finished, General Waldhauser, then the commanding general of all of AFRICOM, went on national TV and said that this team was not indicative of what special operators do, completely just lambasting the entire team and my husband, making it clear that those who had fought and died alongside him weren't worthy of the title of Green Beret. And I began to realize that they were going to punish all of those men who came back, or at the very least, Captain Perazini, who was the leader of the team. So at that point, I felt very frustrated. I wanted to know the truth. And so the men had been under gag orders, and those had lifted right after the media brief. So I went to them and asked them if they would be willing to speak with me. I knew that the media would start coming and asking them to do interviews, and there would be a book or, a documentary or something. And so I asked them to trust me, and they did. So they sat down with me one-on-one over the course of a couple months, starting in May. And by September, I had a basic manuscript put together of the events on the ground that happened in Niger during the ambush. And the following May, AFRICOM gave us their final redacted report. And as I began to compare it to my manuscript, I became a little frightened because I began to see huge disparities between what I knew had happened according to, because I also interviewed not just the surviving team members, but I interviewed some men who were back at the AOB during the ambush, as well as the 3216 Team Arlet commander, who was the Heliborne unit that was supposed to fly in but got canceled, as well as some who were on the ground outside Tongo Tongo when the investigators went in, and also had been involved in recovering the bodies of the fallen, and had written up some of the investigation pieces, and had just kind of been there as paper pushers, so to speak, in writing up the awards and punishments. So by the time I read through the AFRICOM redacted report, I knew enough to know that I should be a little bit worried about what I was going to put out, because it really flew in the face of what we had been told.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just must say there's so much here. First of all, I'm very, very sorry that you and all the other family members had to go through that, because we all know that the elite forces in the United States military, like you said, they don't go rogue. They're very, very proud to do the jobs that they do, knowing exactly what sacrifices they might have to take. And they do that with so much honor and pride. And so just that alone, like you knowing that and then saying, hey, something's wrong here, and then really being careful about what you were hearing. I think your husband would be so proud and honored of how you have handled it and what you've done to make sure that not just his name, but the names of the other men were kept intact, with honor and with the respect that they deserve, right? And I don't know if this gives you any solace or any comfort, but I remember that time period and watching it. And I have, of course, a lot of other military friends and acquaintances. And I remember all of us discussing this and saying, something's not right here. It always seems like they're trying to blame the team. So I don't know if that gives you any type of comfort, but I know that if it was me and my friends thinking that same way, there are many, many other Americans, especially veterans and active duty members who like that just came out, right? And we noticed, we're like, wait a minute, because we've seen this before. Unfortunately, I know we're very proud of our service, but we know it's not perfect, and that people do make mistakes, and sometimes to save their own butts, they blame the lower enlisted, the ones on the ground, which is horrible. But then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the gag order. I think not everybody who is watching doesn't. Not all of them know what a gag order. Can you explain a little bit what that is and how that impacted the research that you did?
So basically, they were told, and they weren't given an official gag order, but they basically were told, "Hey, listen, like all of this stuff is, classified, or will be redacted from the report, and so until the investigation is complete and the families have all the information, you cannot speak to anybody concerning this, because." Um, Basically, they didn't want them saying something that would steer the investigation or go public. But unfortunately, it ended up making the families suspect the team. And the only reason I didn't is because I had a relationship with them for several years before they ever deployed. So I knew most of these guys. And so as I'm hearing this stuff, I didn't believe that they would ever go rogue or that they would act like cowboys or be poor team leaders. I knew them well enough individually to know that it wasn't true. But it did, those people who didn't know them, it made them look very suspicious because the team members are not speaking to us and they're specifically avoiding discussing anything to do with the ambush. So when you hear in the media, this team captain's a bad guy and he won't speak to you about what happened, you start to go, oh yeah, maybe he is, So yeah, the gag orders really can influence the families and the public's perspective of the team, especially when you have the media saying that they have leaks from the investigation, or or say officers are leaking to the media, and these things are coming out, so it paints those at the lowest level in a bad light. Meanwhile, their hands are tied. They can't do anything because they are lowest down the chain, and so their jobs are at risk.
Right. And the other thing you mentioned is that one of the reporters took the camera off of one of their bodies. I mean, I can only imagine that's super illegal, and then exposed it, which ended up, I mean, you mentioned in your book that your son saw that, right? And
Well, it actually wasn't a reporter who took the camera off. What happened was, when the three men were killed initially, Brian, Dustin, and Jeremiah, the militants stripped them of all their gear. So they took the head cam video and created a ISIS propaganda video, which then was released. And then somehow CBS gained access to that and then put that out. So even like right now, we see all of this stuff about, is it Vanessa Bryant, and she's so you see this where she's really upset about the pictures of her husband and her child being out there, and so you can imagine an actual video which depicts my husband's death, and yet that seemed like no big deal because he's just a soldier, and I'm not sure why a civilian is worth more than a soldier. Especially when they have children who are watching these things. But yeah, it was one of the worst things I can imagine anybody doing to the surviving family members.
Yeah. And I can't either. And I remember, staying up to date with that and thinking, I think they're giving too much information that's very painful for family members to be listening to, that should be kept private. But as we see the nature of how our news channels now conduct business, I think that they're disconnected from that personal aspect, right, of what they're releasing out there and how it's impacting not just the families, but the communities. But so now looking back, you've written this book and you've learned so much, and you were able to help these men clear their names, and be able to tell their story. What practices do you think that helped you be able to be successful with not just doing the research, but getting the book to be published?
You know, it was a whole learning process. I'm glad that I didn't know long term how much would go into it. Um, I think something like this, it's good when you have no quit in you. At that point, it was my husband's life, and it was that level of betrayal, by my government. I think as Americans, we love justice and truth. And when we are betrayed, there's something just built in who we are that we need that. And so at that point, was not going to stop. And I think that's the number one thing. It's not like I am an incredible writer, or have this great gift. It literally was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I wanted to quit so many times, but I just didn't. And that's the difference between success and failure in so many things sometimes. Um, is because even after I wrote my initial manuscript, then you query because you need an agent, you need a literary agent. So I wrote this initial manuscript, which looking back now was terrible, but it had a really good story to it, but I didn't know how to write. I'd never written anything in my life. And that's why I'm so grateful that these men trusted me with it, because it really was a gamble. But you query a million people, and a million say no, but one says yes. And what I found out was that you needed to get something published in order to get an agent interested. So I ended up sending something to the New York Times in 2018. And so my first article was published in December 2018 in the New York Times. And it was a piece on Brian's body arriving home at Raleigh-Durham International Airport. And after that, I was contacted by a friend of mine who works at the LA Times. He'd been encouraging me to write since the beginning. And he connected me with his agent, and she was amazing and instantly picked up my book and said she wanted to work with me. So it took us 9 months of after that, taking my book and creating just a basic proposal. So between January 2019 and October 2019, we worked on a proposal, which is just basically a summary and then a couple sample chapters. And once we got that perfected, she took it to New York in October 2019. My goal was to have a publisher within 2 years of Brian's death, which is not normal or reasonable. Usually it's, give yourself 10 years. But Putnam called me in October and said they were interested. Putnam is an imprint of Penguin Random House, and we needed a large imprint because we needed to have the legal coverage for this type of story, because I basically was stating that AFRICOM and the Army had lied to the families, and that's not something you want to just say lightly. So so I signed with them in December of 2019 and published my book in May of 2021. So.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that you said that the only difference, I think I'm probably missaying it, but you pretty much said the difference of somebody who succeeds is those who just keep going and versus those who quit. And I think there's so much truth in that. And you also made sure to say that you hadn't written anything before. And I like that you mentioned this because there's so many people that automatically kind of like cut themselves out, out of the picture of that dream. And they say, well, I've never done this before, therefore I shouldn't because it's not been done. But you kept going and you had that passion and drive. And you said rejected several times, but you kept going. And I think that's when you know that that project that you're doing is something that you truly love because you just keep going. And of course with you it wasn't just something that you love, but it was so personal. And thank you for mentioning that your publisher had this legal aspect that you needed. Can we talk a little bit more about what concerns there were with the legal aspect in writing this book?
Yeah, so because it involved a Green Beret operation on the ground over in Niger, Africa, and because the Afrikaans version was so heavily redacted, we had to worry about classified information. So what's classified? What can you not find in the public domain that you might be finding in this book right now? We had to go through it thoroughly with a lawyer, which took several months. Normally, what you would do with a book on anything military is you would submit it to the military to go through line by line to review and make sure that you're not posting or you're not printing anything that's classified, or it has to do with OPSEC. And so they want to just make sure that we're not putting anything into the public that shouldn't be in the public that would put our troops on the ground in danger. And so I had to be very aware of that. But my problem was that if I submitted this to the military, I was worried that everything that I had found out that mattered would then be redacted, just like it was in the report. There were certain things within the report that were redacted that when I went through, and you'll see if you read the book, is that it really was ridiculous. Like there were certain things that had nothing to do with OPSEC. They were not classified materials. They were more just to kind of cover for the people who were responsible for the incident. That way the blame could be laid down at those at the lower level. And so I knew that if I submitted it, those things would be pulled from my book. And once they were pulled from my book, I could not go back in and reinsert them. So we had several lawyers within Penguin Random House go through it thoroughly, and then I had my own lawyer go through it thoroughly, and we all agreed, okay, this is safe. This is nothing that's not in the public domain, and that's kind of how we moved from there. But if you're putting out a book that you are publishing yourself, or you're using a smaller publishing house, you probably do need to submit your book to the military, and that can take a while. So you really have to allow a lot of time for them to go through and make sure everything's good to go in your book.
Yeah, that's so important for you to share, especially for those who are watching that have plans on publishing their own stories. Because I know that there are a lot of people that experience so many things in the military and they want others to read about it, especially if they are thinking of joining the military, or maybe they're already in the military and they might be facing something, because every author shares a story, not just to share their story, but to help others like yourself, right? So what do you hope people take away from your book and your story?
There's so many things. I hope that they take away that, you can go through some of the most horrible things and still recover. You still have this whole life ahead of you. Sometimes it blows my mind that, Brian died and I thought, all my best days are behind me. And some of the most incredible things that have ever happened to me in my life have happened since he died. And I still miss him every day and hate that this was the cost. But life, no matter how hard it is right now, can be the best it's ever been a year or two down the road. So I hope people just gather strength and resiliency from it, but also a little bit more determination that they can do the things they set their mind to. They just have to be patient and put one foot in front of the other and do that thing every day. Whatever it is that you're passionate about or you're wanting to accomplish, just work a little bit every day, whether it's 2 minutes or an hour, just every single day. Don't give up because you can do it. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I was a stay-at-home mom, so yeah, you can do
Yeah,
it.
which is not just any job, by the way. And I think a lot of us,
No.
that's a whole different animal there, but
Yeah.
should not be underestimated. So Michelle, the title of your book is Sacrifice: A Gold Star Widow's Fight for the Truth, which I love the title. And where can people find your book?
My book is everywhere books are sold. So Amazon, I have Kindle, hardback, and Audible. It can also be found in stores at Barnes and Noble. If you go to my author website, you'll actually find multiple other places you can purchase the book. And you'll also find all of my social media. So if you want to find me on social media and send me, a question about if you're writing a book and you have questions about, hey, how do I find this? Or what do you recommend for that? I mean, send me your questions. I'd love to have a conversation. So.
Yes, yeah, and please take her up on it. Every time an author says, reach out to me, I know that most people are like, oh, I don't know, but please do reach out to Michelle. And Michelle, are you also on social media?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not good at Twitter, but I'm on Instagram all the time at Michelle Black 71. And I'm also on Facebook with author Michelle Black.
Perfect. And is there any event or anything that we should be aware of to help you, to give you support with?
Right now, nope. I actually just had my big book event, so gonna take a little break for the holidays. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that a lot of people buy this book as a gift for themselves or for others right now, especially during the holidays. And again, thank you so, so much for coming on to our show, for being vulnerable and sharing this story with not just us, but with the world. And we're here for you if you need any other type of support, and just reach out to us. And do you have any last words for our audience?
I just really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and listen in and to have me on your show. I so appreciate it. And I so appreciate the veteran community. They're just amazing. If it weren't for the veteran community, I don't know where I would be now.
Yeah, and we're very, very happy to always be here for you. I mean, once you're, part of our community, you're always will be part of our community. We'll always be here for you. So just to recap before we end, we spoke with author Michelle Black, who is the wife of a fallen comrade, and she wrote an amazing book, Sacrifice: A Gold Star Widow's Fight for the Truth, which you can find on her website or on Amazon. We want to thank you for tuning in and for your support. Please don't forget that we're here every single Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And we want to thank you and thank our sponsor, which is Michelle Black, and our veterans for helping us continue this show, because without you, we would not be here. And thank you for your service as well. Now, go thank your fellow veterans, your military spouses, and your military community members. And thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day.